It's time to wander the world, and this travel on CapeTalk is brought to you by Standard Bank Travel. Book your next trip on the Standard Bank app and save up to 40% on your flights. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. Now, in Wonder the World today, we are not hopping on a plane or even driving long distance. We are exploring on our own 2 feet within our own city, taking a closer look at a precinct that is right under our noses. Our CBD, just a couple of blocks away from where we're broadcasting today, a place packed with history and culture, with noteworthy architecture, and with plenty of hidden gems. But for many people, it's a space they've not properly explored, either because they've just never taken the time to be tourists in their own backyard, or because they find the whole city confusing or perhaps intimidating and don't really know where to start and where to go next. And I'm happy to tell you that there is a new initiative in place that hopes to change that mindset and say, come, we're going to show you how to move easily through the inner city and discover all its hidden treasures. I'm talking about the new Inner City Walking Routes map, which has just recently launched, and it offers several different pedestrian routes through the central city, allowing people to explore its places, to connect safely and intuitively on a really sort of people-friendly route, if I can put it that way, that will help them discover places that have previously gone unnoticed. And it's a pleasure to have with us on the line Brad Armitage, who's the co-founder of the Mission for Inner City Cape Town, who are the organisation behind this map. Brad, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome.
Thanks, Pippa. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. A lovely sunny day in Cape Town. So more reason to explore the streets.
Absolutely. And Brad, I know you've got loads and loads of foreign tourists pouring into town, probably doing exactly that. But we're not so good at doing it as locals. Is part of the reason for establishing this walking route map to encourage more Cape Townians to explore this precinct?
I think definitely part of the sort of mandate that was laid at the doorstep of the mission was to create a more vibrant inner city. And Mail Hill Lewis has been a big part of supporting inner city businesses and driving foot traffic and making the streets safer, more inclusive and accessible. So it's been a big ask for us to really understand why we don't have that relationship with our inner city. It's a very walkable inner city. It's sort of 15 to 20 minutes from either side. So we're busy exploring how we can start to change perception around the inner city, and the walking routes is the starting point.
Brad, I mean, you've touched on something there, safety of pedestrians. People are not sure whether it's safe. And the irony is the more people walk the streets and use the streets, the more safe they become. The presence of foot traffic, the presence of extra eyes around you definitely helps to increase one's feeling of being safe. So it's a kind of a snowball impact, I guess, that you're trying to start here.
Yeah, it's something that they refer to as sort of the street ballet, right? More people on the streets watching and seeing what's happening brings safety. But it's also things like lighting and sort of highlighting pedestrian crossings. I know we have a big challenge. We have many challenges like most cities, but parking and traffic is on the increase in terms of city stresses. Yeah. And it's really about encouraging people to walk, and the more people walk, the more safer people feel walking.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, before we go any further about the walking routes, won't you just explain a little bit more about Mission for Inner City Cape Town and who you are? And I mean, you've touched a little bit on the mandate there of making the inner city more vibrant, but just tell us a little bit more about this work.
Yeah, thanks. We're a non-profit that was set up as a partnership between the city. We work alongside the CCID and the Lower Garden SID, and really where they are responsible for, from the city's point of view, it's the larger infrastructural changes that they're bringing to the city to make it easier to use. As I said, from a user-friendly point of view, the SIDs are a massive support in safety and security and the cleaning work that you see their teams on the street. And where the mission fits in is really around how we interact with the spaces. And that's, for us, it's like how do we make the city cooler? But generally what it is sort of highlighting the existing experiences in the city, encouraging more and working across elements like seating and greening. I mentioned lighting. That's been a big part of what we started to influence now is creating safer spaces with sort of festoon lighting, wayfinding, walking routes, are part of that process as well. So we see a lot of tourists. Typically, it used to be the map, the camera around the neck and the map held out, trying to find out and orientate themselves, and now it's on the cell phones. So we're really trying to look at sort of accentuating what's in our city, and then also adding layers of vibrancy to that.
Okay. Now, we'll talk in a minute about the different routes and which parts they cover. I just want to recap for anybody who's come in midway to this conversation that our guest is Brad Armitage, co-founder of the Mission for Inner City Cape Town, talking to us about the newly launched Inner City Walking Routes map. Now, several different routes laid out, sort of roughly a Breer Street route, a Long Street route, a Harrington Square sort of precinct. You've got, obviously, you're going to be bringing a lot of people in from the waterfront space. Let me hand over to you, Brad, and let you give us a sort of an overview of what has been created.
So it's essentially just highlighting the existing routes that are in place and not about creating new layers. Part of the mission's focus is to develop a database that has a strong foundation of information, and that information seeking process has led us to understand how people currently use the city. So as you mentioned, there's a huge traffic flow between the inner city and the waterfront that leads down through North Wharf Square. We have some sort of traditional routes out of the train station in the transportation hub where the buses all meet, and that kind of leads on to St. George's and either left up the Company's Gardens or down St. George's towards the foreshore. And then there's the sort of more sort of entertainment-driven walking routes that lead up onto Breer Street and through the historical and cultural spaces that we have, so from Green Market Square all the way through to the Boer Kaap. Part of that process was sort of intuition-based. We've also then spent a lot of time sitting and watching people, and we've now engaged with a more sort of a formal data collection process. Okay. And then the second part is really the strength of where we feel the Mission for Inner City is kicked off, and that's really getting Cape Townians to play a role and participate. As I mentioned, we're a non-profit, so we rely quite heavily on corporate funding. But part of that is our ability to draw in sort of non-financial contributions, and we were really pleased to announce that the walking route was one of those interventions. It was a inner city design studio called Studio Muti, who put up their hand and said, "Hey, we love what you guys are doing. We love our city. How can we get involved? And these are our talents." So they've really come to the party and helped us illustrate this walking map. It is a very simple map, and the emphasis here is that its focus is on walking routes and highlighting the sort of times and the directions, and then beautifully illustrated map. So an intention would be that this would either find its way into the hand of a tourist via a hotel concierge, or someone that's in the city that maybe is looking to explore on the weekend, that you walks the beaten path that they do on a day-to-day basis, but perhaps wants to bring the family into the city and explore and discover, which is a big part of what the mission is focused on doing as well.
Well, I'm sure you will love an email just in from Fiona who's commenting on how much she has been enjoying the experience of walking the city for the first time when she comes in for First Thursday. She says she experiences the city in a completely different way on foot from how she does driving through it in a car. And it's such a pertinent point. I mean, you anywhere in the world, if you walk through a city rather than busing or driving through a city, you discover so much more, Brad. You when you're driving or taking public transport, you're going from destination A to destination B. There's a sort of an end point that you're focused on, whereas the experience of walking allows you to stop to go, oh, what's that? Or I smell amazing bread coming out of a bakery here. Here's a crafter working on an art piece that I want to take a look at to my left. And it's all those opportunities to find the little guys and the small, interesting, quirky places along the road that you simply miss entirely if you're in a vehicle, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's the idea of looking up and appreciating where you are. And part of what we're so proud of is the city that is definitely walkable. We feel it's walkable, welcoming, and wonderful as our sort of key points. And it's about highlighting what those things are. And I think First Thursdays is one of the things that Cape Townians know well. We identify quite well with that experience, and we've been now looking at part of the walking routes process to unpack other things. So we've just as an example, done an amazing collaboration with a local artist, Heather Moore, who did the Strand Street crossing If anybody's seen it, it's where Strand Street meets St George's. And the idea there was just to bring some joy and delight into the space, bring awareness to the pedestrians, and help with some safety concerns around the speed that traffic uses that space. But
clever.
these are definitely parts of that. Yeah. So she interpreted the joy of summer through a daisy pattern, and that will be you can see on the two double pedestrian crossing just on Strand Street at St George's.
I love that idea of using paint on the road to draw attention that, hey, this is a pedestrian crossing, and hopefully the traffic slows down to admire the artwork as well as slowing down for the pedestrians at the same time. So great idea. Brad, several times I've used the term hidden gems. Maybe we should pick out a couple to just alert listeners to the kind of thing we're talking about. What are some of the overlooked spots that you hope these maps will draw people's attention to?
Well, firstly, I think our green lung in the city is such a special space for us. The company's garden. It's it was sort of historically one of the reasons our city exists. But it is an amazing walking space, from the Archer's Arch, the Snowhetter Design and Derby Initiative at the top, all the way through to the Eco Museums. It's a wonderful space for families, but it's also a great place to just take a moment and pause during your working day. And then if you take a walk through St George's, up St George's and into Green Market Square, there's the newly reopened doorpost. The Eco Museum is also open again. And we have two beautiful churches to explore as well. There's a Methodist church, and further up on St George's is St George's Cathedral, which has things like the free concerts program on at the moment. And then, of course, there's the other sort of maybe lesser known walk, but it's a highly trafficked walk, and that's the walk that leads down through Tybolt Square and down to North Wharf Square, which is our interface with the waterfront. So maybe not the easiest, but along that route, there's 5 to 6 different public art pieces that are discoverable along that space, which is the Brett Murray through to the shark sculpture and some others. So the walking map really highlights just a few of those. Its intention is not to be a tourist map. It's definitely more about understanding how small and compact that inner city is. It really is a 15-minute city. Yeah.
Brad Lee asking a fair question. She says, I take your point that the more people are walking, the safer it gets, but we've got to get to that point still. She wants to know what does this encompass in terms of safety for the pedestrians you're encouraging to use these routes?
Yeah, I think part of it goes hand in hand with some of the wider work that the Mission for Inner City is doing. As I mentioned, a big part of that is to increase our lighting upgrades. So we've done 3 different lighting interventions at the moment, one on Bree Street, one at Short Market, and one Church Lane. And for those that come in to the city on a Thursday night for first Thursday, you'll know that Church Lane, Church Street, where it's pedestrianised, the sort of typical art gallery alley, has just had an upgrade with some incredible lighting. And we've noticed that lighting interventions tend to reduce more negative activity on the street, as well as helping people feel more comfortable. And it's a really good point as well. And just in terms of that lighting, this is something that we are collaborating with private companies with. So Lighthouse, a shout out to them for their contributions to helping us work on a sort of experimental and pilot basis. But the hope is that we'll increase more of that those lighting interventions. And then I think the CCID's work is also very relevant to discuss. They have visible policing on the streets, and really what this walking route is doing is encouraging people to use certain routes more often, and thereby flooding the space with activity, light and foot traffic.
Okay, Brad, in closing, where can listeners get hold of a copy of the Inner City Walking Routes map?
Well, if you contact us through our website, we'll be able to send one to you, but we are doing drops. It's a physical map. We're doing drops in all of the inner city hotels and retail stores. It's in conjunction with another map, which is more of a retail map, which we've launched this week. It's called Gift to the Inner City, and it's a highlights of the sort of independent creative retailers in the city. So any of those from Mummy Water surf store through to Philippa Green. Any of the inner city retailers will have those maps available. But if you contact us through our website, which is innercity.org, so missionforinnercity.org, we'll be happy to send one to you or share the digital map with you as well.
Missionforinnercity.org. Brad Armitage, so great to have you with us. Thanks for taking the initiative on this one, and I hope it's going to bear fruit and see lots more feet on the floor in the inner city over the coming festive season and beyond.
Thank you, and I just encourage Cape Townians that are using the city, please do tell everybody about it, encourage more activity, and the more people we get down, the better. So thank you very much for the exposure.
Our great pleasure. Brad Armitage, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, speaking there on behalf of Mission for Inner City, their website missionforinnercity.org. Ready for your next adventure? Standard Bank's travel platform makes booking, paying for and managing flights easier than ever, all straight from the banking app. Get up to 40% off flights for friends and family, plus enjoy complimentary travel insurance and lounge access when you book with your credit card. It's the start of Standard Bank's exciting journey, a smarter, seamless travel experience that keeps growing with you. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.